So I'm David Strassler. I'm president of Congregation Chaim, and we're pleased to have Chuck Lisner join us today on Zoom. Chuck and I met 15 years ago at a educators conference, and we've been great friends since that time. He's my Havruta, he's my study partner, and we try to get together about once a week. Used to be on Skype, now it's on Zoom. We've also gotten together in person, and our families know each other. He's like an old college roommate that you can't get rid of. So it's good to have him. Sitting next to me is Cantor Beth Strassler. We're so glad to have you all here today for this presentation. So I'm going to turn this over to Chuck, and he will tell you more about himself and about what you're in for today.
So I'm going to share my screen. So I will appreciate Congregation Eighth Chaim having this and putting this together. And Joe, I appreciate you doing the technical stuff here. A little bit about the procedures, how we're going to do. We have some folks lined up to read different passages from Genesis, because we're going to just talk about the first 7 days of creation, or the only 7 days of creation. So some people are going to read, and when you do read, if you'll mention what Chumash you're using, what translation you're using, would be great. And then after they read their translation of the different verses, if anybody else in their translation has something that they want to that is significantly different, or just want to bring up about the translation, please do so. And then I'm going to show, I'm going to talk about my image of that day. I'm going to talk about some of the thoughts that went into it, some of my commentary, so to speak, or other people's commentary on those particular days. And then hopefully other people at the end of my thoughts will bring in their thoughts of either what my image or just thoughts of that particular passage. So I hope everybody has that. And a little bit about how this started. So a couple of years ago, I was doing some photography, and I was starting to do some compositing of different images together. And I'd been up in the Memphis Zoo, and I took some pictures of some animals, and I was compositing them into an image, and I kept going, and I got to what I considered was day 5, the creation of animals. And I've always been interested in the days of creation. It started in my 13th birthday at my bar mitzvah. My portion was this, and Tracy, maybe you can help me remember, but my birthday's in August, but for reasons unknown, it was delayed. My bar mitzvah was delayed till October, and I think it's because my Hebrew was not quite up to speed. So my rabbi kept using this phrase that I didn't know for 40 years. He kept saying ach, and only 40 years later, when I was studying, did I realized he was calling me brother, which is the word for which was ach, although with his accent, maybe it wasn't something he was friendly saying, calling me brother. But I started this, and I decided to continue with the whole days of creation. And I started with the first day. Let me put up a image of how all my images look that are framed. So I have my image above. This is the image you saw on the flyer that Joe put together. And then below, as I have the translation, and then I have some commentary. So that's just the format of the way the image looks. But we're going to start with the first verse. And so as we all know, and what I found out, if you don't know much Hebrew at all, or you don't know any Hebrew, you tend to know these first 7 words. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. And even some of my non-Jewish friends will know that Hebrew phrase. And it's just the opening phrase that sets everything off but it's just a well-known phrase. So Bereshit, I've always found it interesting that the word Rosh is in there from Rosh Hashanah, the beginning, and the beginning of creation, and then bara is creation, unlike the word we see later in day 4, we have yotzer, meaning forming, but bara is creating from nothing. So then we have Elohim, God, et hashemayim, the heaven, and ve'et haaretz, the earth. So here's a translation, and most of the work I do is off of Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, who was a 19th century rabbi. And actually he was, I think, considered the father of modern orthodoxy. And he translates that phrase this way: in the beginning of all coming into existence, it was God who created the heaven and the earth. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that first passage, maybe some meaning to them that they want to bring out?
I do, and I don't know how this works because I can only see you, Chuck. I love the poetry of this. It's a very poetic way to express it. And I'm going to share with you Fox, if that's okay, which is so different.
Oh, yeah.
Is that all right? So Fox says, at the beginning of God's creating of the heavens and earth. And it's so much less poetic.
So do you see the Hebrew on the screen?
Oh, yes. I see the
Okay.
Hebrew on the screen,
Okay.
but the only face I see is yours.
Okay,
so I can't see like everybody else's face.
I will say that at the bottom of Zoom, there's a place that allows you to raise your hand. And if you do that, you'll come up to the front and Joe will acknowledge. If you just raise your hand physically, you may not be able to be seen.
Right. And another thing, if I'm not sure if you're talking about, but if you want to change the view, you can go up to the top in Zoom and choose view, and then choose standard, and that might help you out there. But
standard also is a reduced view, so just so you'll know, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, there's no, the way you have it set up, Joe, I certainly don't have the ability to see the gallery and then the screen. I can see some people.
Okay.
But it's workable as long as you know when people want us to talk. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anybody else have anything on the translation? So this begs the question that there must be something prior to day 1. And what comes, so I said, I'm gonna start with what I call day 0. And so here's my image, and I'm gonna bring it back alone, but for right now, I'm gonna show you my commentary that's under the image. So I have what I consider the white, the essence of God in the center. But I have also started to think about the black as all color. And when all color comes together, we have black. And even color we cannot see is there. And I've always thought of God in heaven, but here we have prior to the creation of heaven. So God is outside of heaven. Again, day 0. And I have in my image, if you look closely, and let me bring back the image. You can see Hebrew. Now the Hebrew is unintelligible. You cannot make any words out, and I intended it that way. And I use that as a thought of God's plan, or what we might call the Torah. And that's what I'm trying to show with that part of my image. So Any other thoughts on day 0 or before creation?
So Chuck, I've seen this picture before, and I never thought this, but people talk about when they pass away, they go to the light. And that's what that makes me think of here, as I'm going to prior to my creation. That's great. Versus the black hole.
Well, so we're going to talk a little bit about black and white in the next image or so, but I understand what you mean about going to the light, and we see that, or we hear about that, but black there's also some significance to the black. But
I
it's
don't think I'd
important.
ever,
Go
I would
ahead.
never thought about day 0. That's interesting, Chuck.
And Chuck, the Hebrew letters, we say that before a baby is born, before he's born or she is born, she knows the whole Torah, or he knows the whole Torah. And there you have in the, before creation, so to speak, before any form comes, like a baby, you have the Hebrew letters that could be symbolic of the Torah.
My favorite part about this is that it looks like black around the edges. But then when God's light shines on it, you can see the Hebrew letters were there all the time. I just love that.
And to me, it feels like almost very cosmic. It kind of feels like the almost like the Big Bang, or the start of like the energy of the universe.
So I've thought a lot about this Big Bang, and the Big Bang, it just seems like there would be something that would be banging. And what I'm trying to show here is, while you see there's things there, I'm trying to show that it's coming from nothing. Toby, you have your hand up, I see.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if you're saying nothing, Chuck, but as an artist, I think you also have that sense about what comes before creation is chaos. And out of chaos, we create something that has form and meaning. And I always think about that day 0, or the many days 0 before God created, as being a kind of chaos out of which God creates order.
Okay. David, your hand's up, I see.
Oh, I just wanted to say it looks like nothing. It looks like nothing until you shine God's light on it. Then there's something there.
That's true. That's a good point. Good point.
One of the things that I see, this is Howie, is that God is an entity who made a decision. And that in the Bible, and how it was reported, the earth was the center of the universe, and how science sees it now. And even as scientists are interpreting today, quite honestly, the scientists are on Earth, and their descriptions are that Earth is the center of the universe, and we're peering out from the Earth to all that is around us.
Okay. Toby, you're up again.
I feel like I'm saying too much here. I think because I'm sort of thinking of it in a very different way. So, and I don't know if I'm leaping ahead or back, Ellie will know. This sense about, as I said, the chaos. And the chaos is not formed, but there's stuff in it. And also, I love that the white space that you have there, our sense about before God could create anything. God had to reduce, God had to withdraw a little to make room for what was to be created. And that white light feels like the beginning of the withdrawing. It's not an expanding white light to me. It feels like the whiteness is making room for the other. And I think that's what's really, and you can, like your letters are reaching into the white, Chuck. You know, they're not pulling away, they're starting to reach together. And so there's more room for that chaos to become something.
And like also in that vein, kind of to feed off what you're saying, Toby, it almost like it also looks like to me like the letters were existing. You know what I mean? There's like a transition where there's the light. It looks like it's illuminating the letters. It looks like the letters are emerging out of the darkness, like they were existing and then becoming illuminated. I don't know if that's what you're going for, Chuck, or not.
Well, that's all there. Myra, was it you that talked about a baby before birth?
Right, right.
So would you think that the baby, the souls are here or souls are in the heaven that's created?
Interesting.
Well, that's what that would be my answer as well.
Yeah.
It's just it's interesting. So I will say this about what Toby said on I forgot the word you used, but I think it's there's two thoughts about retracting. I think that's a Hasidic philosophy of this retraction. I think so. Well, I'm going to go on because because we're sort of leading right into day one. So I'm going to show. Let's see. So here's day one, and here's my commentary, and I'm going to enlarge it in a minute. So I think, Beth, you're reading, and if you could
Yes.
say again what you're reading from.
I'm reading from my buddy Everett Fox,
Okay.
and I'm reading Genesis chapter 1, verses 2 through 5.
That's right. Thank you.
When the earth was wild and waste, darkness over the face of ocean, rushing spirit of God hovering over the face of the waters. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light, that it was good. God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was setting, there was dawning, one day.
Does anybody else have anything on their translation they want to bring forward? So my image here is on the right, you see the light that was in day one, or excuse me, day zero, and I have the word Yehi, or as we translate it, let there be. And what I say here is, out of words, creation is started, out of sound, movement begins. And the God's breath, or Ruach Elohim, is surrounding the forming world in the center, which I'm I'll put this back, excuse me. Huh, I can't do it. Okay, so here we go. So we have I have light entering this. Now, doctors have told me, and my daughter told me this, Howard, you might, and David, I think you said, it looks like an expanding cell. Well, that's not what I didn't know anything about what an expanding cell looks like. That was getting ready to separate into two cells, but they all say it looks like that. So I have Ruach Elohim in the orange and the yellows and the browns around the forming world. And the Spirit of God, I remember in two distinct places in the Torah. One, Moses is selected, and one of the reasons he's selected is this Ruach Elohim, this Spirit of God. And then at the end in Deuteronomy, Joseph, who leads the Israelites into the promised land or into Canaan, he has Ruach Elohim. And I don't recall that phrase being in many other places. So I have, I show that, and then I also have some Hebrew in there. Hopefully you can see it. It's not linear, it's upside down, it's left and right. And the words I have are wisdom and knowledge, understanding, holiness, repentance, peace, and sin. The Rambam calls God the knower, the known object, and knowledge itself. So I included knowledge as one of them. Sin, which by the way, all the words except for sin are in white. Sin I have in black. And sin is ever present in the world as we just look around anywhere today and we can see it, unfortunately. Repentance, I've always understood as a concept the Jews brought to humanity so that we can have the opportunity to move forward move forward in our lives after we sin. Wisdom leads to understanding and then to knowledge. Peace is our ever-present goal, and then holiness I have, because you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. I do have this image encased within a developing sphere, so to speak, because I did want to show a finite space around this forming world, which we'll see in day 2 here in a second. So the first question I have for anybody, are there any other thoughts that you feel that are significant that maybe I should have put in here as in words? Any other words come to y'all's mind that maybe I should put in?
Ruach.
Ruach, okay.
One of the things I like about, and I think I noticed that because one of the things I like about Fox's translation is he uses the translation rushing spirit, which to me is very ruachy, you know,
Yeah.
rushing spirit. I love that.
Any other thoughts on this? All right, I'm gonna move on. Y'all saw a lot of this in the flyer as well. So now we come to day 2. Let me see who's reading day 2. Jack, I believe you're reading
Yes.
verse 1:6 to 1:8. If you would,
Yes.
go ahead, please.
This
And
is
where are you
from the
reading from?
this is from the Art Scroll Stone Edition, 1997. God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate between water and water." So God made the firmament and separated between the waters which were beneath the firmament and the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. God called to the firmament heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a significant translation they want to bring forward? Okay, so I found this image to be my most difficult one. You can see the day 1 image. Well, let me go. I'm sorry. Let me I got it. There we go. So you see the day 1 image, and then I have what I made out to be firmament. But I'll tell you, I found this to be the rakia, the word rakia, why we call it firmament, sheet of separation, as other translations, a vault or heaven, all concepts on that word. I found it most obscure. And we do see lightness and darkness, day and night, and separations occurring with this day. And we're separating the new world forming below the Rakia and God's world above. Some people will say Eretz is the human world, and the Shemayim or heaven is God's world. And Rabbi Hirsch says, everything which the earth receives from the heavens above come through the Rakia. And I just think the Rakia is a chukim. We hear that on our Shabbat services, that item that is in the Torah, but it's not fully understood. And that in Messianic times, we will understand it. So that is my image, the colors, it's all digital. The first one was digital. I could not get up in space and take any pictures, although I did use a NASA image on my day one. But this is a total digital creation. And I wanted to show the blackness, and then the glowing hues in the firmament. Any thoughts?
Well, Rambam says that the firmament, which separates the upper and the lower waters, are all part of the mystery of creation, which we're really not capable of understanding. And even those who may have limited ability and quality to know them never speak of them.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. Yeah, Susie, you got your hand up. You're on mute, Susie. You're still on mute. There you go.
No, hold on. Let me just give me a second here, Susie. I can. there
Now
we
you
go.
can hear. What's the significance of the little thing in the middle that's kind of gold and circled in an oval?
Okay, so that's the image that we saw from day
Day one.
one. And I put that in the middle. So here's my day one image. And what I did, I basically kept it and put it in that is what you're talking about, this right
Okay.
here.
Right,
And
right.
so I wanted to show the firmament separating something. And I just like Jack says, it's just a mystery. But that's what that image that is in the middle. Anybody else have anything?
To me, that's saying that this little image right here, which maybe in my interpretation is God, and his power is creating these circles around it. Is that
That's okay.
what you think?
Well, I didn't put God in the middle, but I have no objection to your thought on that.
Well, that's what I was thinking that little circle represented, but
All
just
right.
Toby, you have your hand up.
I kind of think that the problem for us to understand this is that the people who wrote it got it wrong. They believed that there was water above and water below. And we know that that's not, well, it is in that there's water droplets and vapor above. But in terms of the ideas of bodies of water above and below, that's not really what it is. So I think it makes it especially hard for us to envision what's written in the Torah, because it's wrong.
Okay.
I don't agree, Toby.
Who's saying that?
Yes.
Sally. Because I just don't think it happened yet. I think you got to wait for day 3, which is coming right up, because I think that it is something that we can't understand, what the waters above and what the waters below were. And it's all, you got to wait another day for what's going to happen next. And then it becomes easier. Yeah, I just remember, I think this is, I appreciate what Chuck said about what a hard picture it was to figure out how to put together because they think the whole concept is so far beyond us, like Maimonides said. But I don't think it's wrong. I just think we don't
Well-
understand it, and I don't think it's formed yet. God goes faster and faster with the creation as time goes on. But at the beginning, light's the first day, and this is what God does the second day. And the light, the first day is not the sun. So I mean, it's very mystical.
Rambam goes on to say, just to finish it, that all the days except this one, number 2, are understandable by those who are of simple intelligence and those who are of great intelligence. This is all part of his concealed and revealed, and that this is part of the concealed, that even the most wise, you can't get it. You're not supposed to get it.
Well,
But you can't move on without this.
and also to like, like I agree, Toby, like what you say is one perspective, but I think that's one of the reasons why we'll never understand the universe and we'll never understand Hashem, is because people can only understand things in relation to themselves and their knowledge, and people will never be able to think outside of themselves, if that makes any sense, and never comprehend things outside of their relation or larger than themselves. But just a thought.
Well, I will say that Isaiah says, lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these things. And that comes into play here. Well, I appreciate all the support and my lack of understanding. I'm glad I'm not the only one. So we're going to move on. And Ellie, I think you're reading next. So let me get my image up.
Oh,
And,
that's gorgeous.
and my day 3. So you have verse 1:9 to 1:13, if you will.
Yes, and I'm reading Richard Elliott Friedman, and his translation is, and God said, let the waters be concentrated under the skies into one place, and let the land appear. And it was so. And God called the land earth, and called the concentration of the waters seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth generate plants, vegetation that produces seeds, fruit trees, each making fruit of its own kind, which has its seed in it on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought out plants, vegetation that produces seeds of its own kind, and trees that make fruit that each has seeds of its own kind in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, a third day.
So with my image here, I just put a tree, one simple tree in, a fruit-bearing tree. And we see light, but we don't see the sun because the sun hasn't been created, but we know that light and darkness has been created. There we go. I show the transition of water from the sky. You might be able to see what looks like rain in this image as water goes up and down. I also have clouds forming throughout the image, the mist. And from water. We are man, I think before the flood, is only to eat these plants and leave the seeds for continued growth. And what I enjoyed seeing and thinking about was that each tree, each plant is of its own kind. It's unique unto itself, and they never intermingle to become a new formation. All created plants and trees are on this day. So I have the cycle of life beginning here. Also, this is the first image that is not digital, and it's photographs, or it is a composite, but still it's photography and some digital creation. And let's see. And then I want to talk about movement. So movement is here as we know from trees and leaves. It's not internal movement, which we're going to see here shortly. It's external input into the movement. So I forgot to ask if there was anybody else had any other translation they wanted to read, and then we'll call on you, Ellie.
Yeah, it looks like.
Okay, Ellie.
Ellie, I think you have to mute yourself. I'm going to ask you to mute. There we go.
I was trying to lower my hand, which doesn't want to lower, but I'll keep trying to do that. All I wanted to say was that to me, this is one of the most marvelous parts of the whole thing, in that this is the beginning of God saying that the earth is going to be able to go on, that God isn't going to keep creating things because God puts the seeds within it, and that you pointed out that it doesn't mix with each other, but it's also that each tree, each vegetable, each everything is going to be able to reproduce on its own, and that it's not going to take God's continuing acts of creation, and that's what's going to keep happening over the days of creation, that God is going to create an earth that's going to support life of all different kinds.
Thank you.
Hey, Chuck, in the picture, the water being present, it looks like rain coming from the clouds.
I do have rain. Yes, I wanted to show water going up and down. That's
Yeah, and that I think scientifically, the search for life is always connected to the search for water.
Isn't that the truth? Toby, you have your hand up. Thanks, Howard.
Ellie, can you remind us in your translation? Let me share the Fox, and then you'll tell me if it's the same. The Fox says the earth brought forth sprouting growth. So I can't remember whether your translation says it's that earth brought forth or God brought forth.
It's the same concept. Let the earth generate plants.
Thank you.
And Toby Fox does say that in the verse before. God said, let the earth sprout forth.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? Anybody have anything else?
So Chuck, are you saying that water's coming down and water's going up?
Yes.
That makes me think of the story of Noah, where the water is coming out of the earth, not just from above.
Sorry, Toby, did you have another comment?
No,
David,
I'm sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
No worries, it's all good.
So I think that's called primordial water. And I think that water from the flood is coming internal from the earth. And I'm not showing that here. I'm just showing, I forgot what it's called now. When water is evaporates and goes up, I guess it's evaporation. That's what I'm thinking.
Condensation.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. We're going to go on. We get time's going. So let's see. So here we have day 4. And I call this lights of time. And Alan, I think you're reading 14 to 19. So unmute.
I'm using our congregation, Eitz Chaim Chomesh was from the Rabbinical Assembly of Conservative Judaism, 14 to 19. God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate day from night. They shall serve as signs for the set times, the days and the years, and they shall serve as lights in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the earth. And it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to dominate the day and the lesser light to dominate the night and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the earth, to dominate the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that this was good, and there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have something in their translation they'd like to bring forward?
I have a question. Fox uses there was setting, there was dawning for each day of creation. So if the sun wasn't created until now, what was setting and dawning?
Great.
Beth, no, you weren't acknowledged. I didn't acknowledge you. I didn't want you to ask that question. Ellie, go ahead.
All I was gonna say that the Friedman translation says regulate instead of dominate. And I think there's a huge difference between those two concepts. And I looked at the Hebrew and I'm not sure I would have gotten regulate instead of dominate, but that's what Friedman does.
Okay, so back to Beth's question. I do not have an answer for that. And you know, I have not even read anything that talks about that.
There's lots of stuff.
So I really don't have an answer for you. I'm sorry.
Toby, why would Fox use setting and dawning instead of what was it, day and night? Evening and morning?
Well, the only thing I know about Fox is he really tries to be as literal in translating the Hebrew as he can. And I guess in this case, it leaves a little mystery there because he uses that setting and dawning early on, like each time. So here, at least God has placed a couple of lights in the heavens, in the dome, by the way, in that dome that was referred to before by in Fox's translation. So at least the lights exist, but he's been using that language right along. Ellie, do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, because I don't understand why Fox is doing the setting and the dawning, because the Hebrew is simpler than that. The Hebrew is just Vayihi Erev Vayihi Voker, Yom Revi'i Vayihi. So it's I don't see where I always say, I mean, these people know a lot more than I do, but I just don't see where he gets it, because it's just Vayihi.
So I have a question of someone who knows like absolutely nothing about this. Is it described as a mechanism to separate the different days? Some sort of a separation? Or is there like light involved?
Well, you've got the separation from the Vayihi. I mean, there's evening and there's morning.
Okay.
On each to separate each, but I just don't see there is that separation that you're asking about. I just don't see the setting and the dawning.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
So we do establish time with this, and I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. I want you to see my stars, my constellation. So you see the little constellation up above the moon. I don't know if you see my mouse at all, but I put those stars. That's the constellation Leo, because I'm of Leo, so I had to put that in. So the first thing Maimonides studied, and I think the first thing he wrote, was a mathematics book on astronomy, because of the importance of this time. We know about Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, and how the festival of the new moon. And he was very exact to understand that things were to be in their correct time, unlike Islam that uses the lunar month but doesn't add a month. Judaism adds months throughout the year so that Passover is in the spring as it's depicted and so forth. So he also studied astrology, which was very interesting. And then he said that was more idol worshiping, and he quit studying astrology and he focused on astronomy and the computations needed for these new moons and so forth. So I found that interesting. And anybody else have any thoughts on my day 4 as we move on? So we're gonna move on. So my first image I created was this day 5 image. And you can see I talked about the animals that I composited in. And so I actually call this, and here's my commentary, day 5 and day 6. Now, why? Before, when I did this, I always thought this was day 5, only to read more deeply into it and realize that land animals came on day 6. So we have the commentary, the verses we're going to read, and Mara Strasser is going to read verse 120 to 125. It's going to include some of day 6. So if you would, Mara, go ahead and read, please.
Sure. This is the Stone Edition Tanakh, the art series, 1996. God said, "Let the waters teem with teeming living creatures and fowl that fly about over the earth across the expanse of the heavens." And God created the great sea giants and every living being that creeps with which the waters teemed after their kinds, and all winged fowl of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, but the fowl shall increase on earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, a 5th day. God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures, each according to its kind, animal and creeping things, and beast of land, each according to its kind." It was so. God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, and the animal according to its kind, and every creeping being of the ground according to its kind. And God saw it was good.
Does anybody else have anything on those verses that they want to bring forward? Okay, so
Oh, wait, I think Toby has a
Toby, go
comment.
ahead. I'm sorry.
So the
No
one
problem.
thing that Fox says a little differently here, let me not lose it. In line 20, oh no, he starts in 24. He names herd animals. He says herd animals, which that defines sort of maybe it doesn't define domesticated animals, because I guess there are lots of animals that run in herds before they were domesticated. But he uses those words, herd animals, which I find interesting.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? So let me go and make a few comments. Go ahead, David.
Chuck, this is Howard.
Howard, go ahead.
One of the things that's striking is why the separation of describing what animals are created between day 5 and day 6. Is it to set the stage of the uniqueness of man being on land?
We have the water and the air. I don't have an answer. I can only say that day 5 is the water and the air, and then day 6 are earth. Go ahead, Ellie.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in fact it's the opposite, that humans are created on the same day as the land animals are created. So just in case we think we're so special, I mean that so sea and birds are created. I mean what you just said, but the land animals, including the domesticated animals and the wild animals, are all created on the 6th day ahead of human beings.
So we create, or excuse me, what is it? We didn't create, but what is created are multiple, like you said, herds. That's not two. And that's going to become important on the next part. So we have multiple animals. And I love this phrase, va'of ya'ofef, birds fly. It's the same root in there. I just wanted to bring that up. Birds flying comes from the same root. We have movement starting here. This is internal movement. We have this nefesh chaya, this life, nefesh chaya, and that's not soul. I've always thought of that as soul. Nefesh chaya is soul, but I think it's better described as an internal or instinctual movement. And if you think about animals, and I saw my dog the other day instinctually attack this squirrel and take it to its death. Total instincts. And so that's what's created on day 5 with these animals and day 6 with these animals. And again, movement that started on day 4 with external movement. We now have internal movement starting. And I will also say that we have, after the sea animals and the birds are created, they're considered good. And when the land animals are created, they're considered good. And I did not put I forgot let's see, what's it say? Sea monsters. I didn't have a sea monster, but I did put in a land monster. I put in a dinosaur here, but I did not put in the sea monster. And I will add one last thing about the Midrash. And I think you all have heard this before, that angels argue with God. And they feel like the creation is complete at this time. But of course, God wants more, wants to create man. And I think that's all. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Shall we go on? Okay. So let's see, we got day 6. And let's see who's reading day 6. Lynn, 26 to 31, please.
I'm reading from the Chumash from the Union of Reform Judaism, the Reform Movement, published in 2008. God now said, let us make human beings in our image, after our likeness, and let them hold sway over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, over the beasts, over all the earth, over all that creeps upon the earth. So God created the human beings in the divine image, creating them in the image of God, creating them male and female. God then blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and tame it, hold sway over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, and over every animal that creeps on the earth. And God said, look, I have given you all the seed-bearing plants on the face of the earth, and every tree that has in it seed-bearing fruit. These are yours to eat. And to every land animal, and to every bird of the sky, and to all that creeps on the earth, in which is the breath of life, I give all green vegetation for food. And so it was. God then surveyed all that God had made, and look, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the 6th day.
Okay, who else has anything that they want to bring up on a translation? Thank you very much for reading that. No one else has anything? So I don't want to translate the word Adam as Adam. And my understanding of it is more of humanity. And I think Lynn, you had a little bit of humanity in your translation.
Human beings.
Human beings, okay, human beings. Now there is a Talmudic commentary that this Adam that was created was a male and female combined entity, and male and female found within Adam. And Ish and Isha, which is man and a woman, doesn't show up in Genesis until the 2nd chapter, verse 23. And then that's what you see is Ish and Isha. But before that, you have this word Zachar for male and Nakava as a female. So it's not separate entities. Let's see. So I'm going to show you my image here. And so what we saw circling on day 1, the different words, knowledge and understanding, peace, and so forth. I have entering both the male and the female, and I do have them, which I think is readily apparent, on an equal setting. I also have the elephant blowing his horn to announce the arrival of humanity. And then off in the right, I have sort of a tree in the Garden of Eden, and you can see items coming down in that area. I got good and bad, or Tov and Ra. So I will say that this completes the building. Day 6 pretty much completes the building blocks of creation. Let's see. And the one last thing I want to mention is fish, birds, and land animals were created in mass, like we talked about. But when mankind is created, we have one family, male and female, but eventually we have Adam and Eve, or just one unit. And sages concluded that God wanted to prevent war between mankind and did not want anyone to say their ancestors were better, to prevent inter-family feuding, inter-family feuding. So I found that to be an interesting statement. I also say that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, he was in one of his commentaries, he said that we share 98% of our genes with primates. The extra 2% gives us the ability to think outside of ourselves and wonder and seek our deepest sense of being. Bring the 98% animal within us close to God and allow the material to be suffused with the spiritual and become something else. Some other thoughts on this is, and because I had a recent grandson born, babies are born pretty much all instinct, not much else than instinct. And as they grow older, that instinct becomes the 2%. The 2% kicks in, this Rabbi Sachs is talking about, and we begin to think for ourselves. And the last thing comes from Rambam. Free will is accorded every man. If he desires to take the good path and be righteous, he is free to do so. And if he desires to take the evil path and be wicked, he is free to do so. The Creator does not preordain mankind to be good or bad. Any other thoughts on day 6? Somebody must have something. Are we maxed out here? Okay,
No,
Toby. Toby, you
I'm
went
very
quiet.
sorry, Toby. You're gonna have to unmute.
All right, sorry, I didn't realize I was still muted. On my screen, I'm not actually seeing the whole image, and I'm wondering if I'm the only one or if you can slide it a little so I see. I'm not seeing Adam. I'm just seeing the female figure Eve or whatever. So I don't.
I think Toby, are you able to? There's like a slider. Are
Yeah,
you able
when
to?
I move the slider, what happens is the gray around it expands, not the image.
Huh?
Is everyone else seeing the entire art piece?
Looks okay
Just me?
here.
I see
Do
the
we all
whole
see it
thing.
okay?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
it's
I'm
just
not
me. I
sure.
saw it for a moment, but I'm not seeing it now. It's
Huh.
knocking off that right side, and I don't have a clue. I wonder if
Let's
it's. Wait a minute,
see.
I can reduce the viewing. I can see the whole thing by reducing the size of the image. It's okay.
Oh,
I just
okay.
reduced it down to 50%, and I see the whole
Oh,
image.
okay. Glad to hear.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how to do the hands, so I'll just raise mine. When, Chuck,
Old
Chuck, when you
school. Okay.
said Adam, meaning man and woman, is that your interpretation, or is that a rabbinical interpretation or a midrash?
I can only say that the Talmud does talk about, there is commentary. I was on a Safari, which does have some commentary on, it's an app that has commentary. And in one of the commentaries, it does talk about this form that is both male and female.
Well, of course, that would talk about, I mean, I'm not as learned as you guys by any means, but I think I remember where God takes a rib and creates woman. So
That's chapter 2. I don't do chapter 2. Because
I have a question.
go ahead, Susie.
There are Hebrew letters in the lights that are shining down on these two figures. What's the significance of that?
Okay, those are some of the those are the same words that were in that day one image of knowledge and understanding and peace and sin and repentance. So it's what I'm trying to indicate, that what was always present is now flowing into the humans.
All right.
Did not flow into animals,
And
into humans.
one thing that no one questioned was man and woman was created in the image of God. How do you depict that?
Well, I think that's just a statement. It's a straightforward statement. In the image of God, after God's likeness. And I just depicted humans.
Okay.
I don't, I don't have an idea what God looks like, only by the statement you just stated.
And I always took that as my soul, which is part of God that dwells within me. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I feel about it.
Well, I really don't have, I'm not sure I'm following you, but I think part of that, those words or those thoughts that I have going in, I would say is going into the soul of the human.
Yeah, but let me ask you about that. Because Adam and Eve, for people, didn't get a lot of those concepts until they ate from the tree of knowledge. And so I'm wondering when those words, which I think are beautifully graphic, but are they appropriate to put there now, before they did get that understanding? I just asked the question.
Well, I think that's a good question, and I think it's a good point. So maybe it's always been present, but only when they ate of the fruit did it come out? I don't know. I
Or,
put
or
it.
were they able to actualize it then? But it
Yeah.
was there to be actualized.
So
I don't know.
So the interesting thing, Chuck, that never occurred to me, that kind of you were talking about, and what I hear when you're talking about a man and a woman, is I didn't realize I didn't look at it the way that there's that potentiality there already, and Hashem like brought it out. I don't know. It's a new perspective for me.
You're blowing my image. Just teasing.
So Chuck, only part of it actually, because first of all, I want to say something about those lights that are coming into them. Whenever you've used that, it's so, I want to say it's gossamer. It's not gossamer. The surface is almost metallic, or almost the kind of luminescent surface we see on different kinds of fish, different plastic surfaces, or the glassware that sometimes is fused with these metallic things. So there's a beauty to that image, whether it's got letters in it or not. And if we're blowing your image, I think the light of God, to me, seems to enter the first humans, but maybe not these concepts. So I think that part of the image does not get blown, and it's a particularly beautiful part of the image. And as a bit of an aside, I have some friends who have, I think it's actually a print, and it is of the unified image, man and woman together. And you can sort of tell they're sort of pulling apart, they're sort of separating, but they're still one being, and the genders are sort of mixed. And it's a beautiful print. And I see it every time I go there. So I'm thinking about that as I'm thinking about these really very separated man and woman. Not only that they are two different beings, but they're separated by distance, and almost looks like a crater between them.
Well,
I was just. Sorry. I just want to add something too, Chuck, because I feel maybe I didn't clarify myself enough that there was a potentiality there, but Hashem is a sort of catalyst for all these things at the same time. So I didn't mean to like totally, but it's like Hashem it's like a catalyst to start things that had that potential. I don't know, that's how it came off to me.
Can I, Myra pointed this out to me, and I'm going to read it because the writing is incredibly small. This from the Stone edition of the Tanakh, but from the Rambam writes about 127. Among all living creatures, man alone is endowed, like his creator, with morality, reason, and free will. He can know and love God and can hold spiritual communion with him. And man alone can guide his actions through reason. It is in this sense that the Torah describes man as having been created in God's image and likeness. And I'll add that the use of the word man, that we use colloquialisms such as whether it's man or woman or other, we say, hey, guy, and guy is not refer to any sexual orientation, but a general, perhaps human being.
Thanks. Thank you, Howard. Anything else before we move on? My last thing I did not say is I do have the woman pointing upwards. And I wanted that connection with God because she creates, she does the birth. And so I wanted that, I put that in for that connection. All right, day 7. So day 7 is in chapter 2. Now I struggle with why is day 7 in chapter 2, and I came to the thinking that chapter 1 is the completed entity, and we're moving from the physical into more of a spiritual. And so let me see, who's reading 7? Let me see. Toby, I think you're reading 2:1 to a little bit of 2:4.
Yep. And I also am reading from Fox, and it says, "Thus were finished the heavens and the earth with all their array. God had finished on the seventh day his work that he had made, and then he ceased on the seventh day from all his work that he had made. God gave the seventh day his blessing, and he hallowed it. For on it he ceased from all his work that by creating God had made. These are the beginnings of the heavens and the earth. They're being created." They're THEIR, they're being created.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything from their readings, their translation? Okay, so like I said, the physical world is ending, has pretty much ended. I show the what is called a hair's breadth of time with my flash of light is what I'm trying to show there in the center. So the creation is complete, and let's see. And we start what Heschel, I want to talk about after the physical world, Abraham Joshua Heschel breaks the 6 days from the 7th with his concept of space and time. 6 days we work, improve, and create. On the 7th day, we think of our time in the world, a spiritual time, a time to think about why we are here. And so each Shabbat, and I'll tell you, I did not know what I was going to put on Shabbat, because Shabbat is a very individualized thing. I almost thought about just not doing Shabbat and just, but I came up with this, but it could be many different things. Each Shabbat is like the creation, a completion of the events of the previous week, and a time to reflect and enjoy one's accomplishments, like an anchor in the week. Does anybody else have any thoughts on day 7 they want to bring forward? Okay, Toby, go ahead.
Did I hear you say you wanted to talk about Heschel?
Well, I did quote Heschel on his concept of space and time.
Okay.
The day 6 of space and day 7 of his time to reflect. Did you want to say something about that?
Well, I actually, I don't have it in front of me, but you know what? I'll let people continue, and I'll see if I can find this particular reading from Heschel. So I will go away for now.
Okay. Anybody else have something? Because I really don't, that's all I have. So David came down in October and saw my, the first time I showed this was last October. And so this is the way I presented it in the gallery. I just thought I would close with a showing of what it looked like. So I appreciate everybody coming, unless somebody else has something you want to add.
I just want to say thank you and tell you that each of them is amazing, and helps me certainly to think about different things as I think about each day of creation, and they're beautiful. I mean, it's not just
they're really beautiful.
that it helps us to think they're absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing them with us.
Yasher Koach.
Thank you very much.
You put a lot of thought into these, and it's wonderful. I have really learned a lot from this. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Well, I feel blessed to have Chuck present to us all this great thought, wisdom, work they put into it. Be able to visualize and think through the words and the commentaries. They were great. I want to let you know that in lieu of an honorarium, Chuck requested that the money go to a Ukrainian organization. And one of our members, Leah Maycumber, had just been in Ukraine, and she's going to be suggesting an orphanage because there are many children who now don't have parents, and they have to figure out how to help them out. So thank you, Chuck. And I want to thank everyone for participating and coming. Thank the readers. I especially like to thank Joseph, our IT guy, who really helped make this happen. I have to make an announcement because this is a Jewish event. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, please join us for our Cantor Strauss is going to lead her guitar service, and it's going to be marvelous. So I hope you join us.
Just so y'all know, I think the rabbi was out of town, and that's the reason why Chuck was delayed, because I got the same
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I enjoyed doing it. As an artist, it's always good to have people look at your work, and appreciate everybody's comments, both religiously and just artistically. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice.
Alrighty. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, take
Bye.
care. Everyone have a good evening.